You know, college football is right around the corner when we are at the premier summer event of the college football season here in the South, and that is SEC Media Days. Today was day one, and I'm here with Jed May from UGAsports.com. I'm Randy Powers from A Damn Beast Media, and we are going to let you know all about it. Like I said, today was day one, and Jed's going to give us the inside scoop. What are your initial thoughts?
Yeah, well, Greg Sankey gave his State of the Conference address, and there's a lot of house settlement talks and things like that. The biggest thing from him was, that I took anyway, was there's no plans to expand. He's firm that the SEC is staying at 16. Does that mean anything? Maybe not. But that was interesting to hear from him. And then, yeah, we got to hear from, it was Brian Kelly, Shane Beamer, Lane Kiffin, and Clark Lee. Ordinarily, that'd be a big day, but Georgia only plays one of those teams this year, at least on the schedule right now. But still a good quartet to kick off the week.
Well, it's like they said, it is a new era here in the SEC, and they did break a little bit of news. SEC Media Days next year, for those of you who want to go ahead and make your plans, are going to be back in Atlanta, which will make life easier for both of us.
Yes.
So you mentioned who the four coaches who showed up today, the four teams that showed up today. So we also heard about one of the newest Bulldogs, and that would be London Humphreys, because the Vandy guys, he played for Vandy last year. So do they have anything interesting to say about the new Bulldog?
Yeah, I talked with a couple of Vanderbilt players. Safety CJ Taylor, I asked him, when did you know this kid was going to be really good as a freshman? And he was like, yeah, well, there's this day in practice last year where he was in the slot and ran a slot fade, and everybody else on the defense looked like they had dead legs, and he took off past everybody. And then another Vanderbilt player whose name is escaping me right now, but he went to high school with London, and he said, yeah, he didn't even really play football until like his junior year. He was a baseball guy, he was a track guy, and a lot of the people around the school, Christ Presbyterian Academy in Tennessee, were like, this kid is way too fast to be on the baseball diamond. So eventually they coaxed him into football. So if you think about it, he's really only played 3 years of serious football, the last 2 years in high school and last year at Vanderbilt. So he's only going to get better and better. We saw what he could do last year when he housed that long touchdown against Georgia, and now he's going to be developed under Kirby Smart and James Coley and everybody else. I
think you hit the nail on the head right there with the development piece, right? With him being an up-and-comer, because it wasn't his recruitment; it was a fast rising. Like, it all came together quickly, right?
Yeah, and even talking to those guys today, he didn't even really get a bunch of playing time like halfway through his junior year because he hadn't played a lot of football. So he didn't go to all the camps and stuff early in the recruitment process like a lot of these other guys did. So, which, that's an advantage to Vanderbilt because he's in your backyard. He's a guy they probably knew of more so than some other schools out there, and got him on campus. But in how modern college football goes, Georgia saw what he did firsthand and got him on campus.
Yeah, it seems maybe like a tactical addition, at least in the beginning, right? Just because of his speed.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the speed is. I mean, again, he caught, it was, I guess, a post or slant or something last year and sliced through the Georgia defense for like a 70-yard touchdown. So definitely an element that Georgia has wanted to add. Arian Smith obviously has got great speed. Now you've got London Humphreys to complement.
Right. Well, you know what they say. Game is game and the tape don't lie. Yeah, so the coaches saw what they liked and they brought the young man on board. So that's cool. So one of the other coaches that showed up today was Coach Shane Beamer at South Carolina. Now, the Dogs don't play South Carolina this year, and I know a lot of you older Georgia fans are going to be like,
very weird.
This feels funny. But they're not going to play unless Carolina somehow skips into that 12-team playoff or makes it to the SEC conference game, championship game. And I think actually some of the South Carolina guys sort of said something about that, like maybe we'll see them in Atlanta or something. I mean, what are they doing in South Carolina?
Well, and Shane Beamer said today that, because it's so funny, you think back to this time last year, they ended 2022 with, they beat Tennessee really bad in Columbia. They beat Clemson. So there was he said a lot of people felt like they were a feel-good story at this time last year. They went 5-7. They had a really tough stretch in the middle of the year. And I think it's fair to say that they fell pretty decently short of expectations.
Yeah.
So this year, Shane Beamer said, we feel like that media is going to pick us low in the conference, and that's fine because Shane Beamer is very confident in his group. He feels like there's no ceiling at South Carolina. And he feels like the expectation is that program should be competing for playoff spots year in and year out, especially because, like you said, it's expanded to 12 teams now. So there's optimism in Columbia. We'll see. They're obviously replacing a bunch of guys. Spencer Rattler at the top of the list, but Shane Beamer is, which not that you would expect Shane Beamer to be anything less, but he is very confident in the group he's got in Columbia.
Well, you mentioned it. I mean, Spencer Rattler's gone, so there is a new quarterback. Any thoughts on their new QB?
Well, it seems like Lenora Sellers, the redshirt freshman, is the front runner, I guess. He got some action last year. And he mentioned both Sellers and Robbie Ashford, who Georgia fans know from Auburn. Bigger guys, they can make plays with their legs. But they're both, I mean, Robbie Ashford is more of a known commodity, I guess. He didn't have a ton of success at Auburn. Lenora Sellers is the guy, though, who's, I mean, he could come in and light it up. You don't really know. So he got his feet wet. He got some action last year, and now it's going to be, they play, I believe, Old Dominion week 1, and then week 2 they play at Kentucky. So if you are rolling with the guy making his first few starts, that's going to be a very interesting test week 2 up in Lexington.
Yeah, and you mentioned he got some time last year. I believe it was against Furman. He had a couple of big balls and had a good night. So let's get to the game that Georgia fans may care about the most, and that would be Ole Miss, and the fact that Georgia's going to have to travel to Ole Miss this year and play the Rebels. Lane Kiffin was in the house today. Was he as tan this year as he was last year? I'm just curious.
The media room is so big. I was so far back, it was hard to tell. I would guess so. Greg Sankey mentioned that he plays a lot of pickleball.
Yeah.
So they got a pickleball league going in Oxford. So he spends a lot of time outside. Whether he's still tan or not, it's hard to say. But
okay.
But yeah, and Lane Kiffin obviously he's dealing with the loss of his father Monty over the past week, and Greg Sankey did a good job of touching on that and acknowledging it. But as far as Georgia goes, it was actually our own Anthony Dasher who asked him, how did the loss to Georgia last year for Ole Miss affect how they approach recruiting, affect the transfer portal? And Lane Kiffin was like, yeah, we need to recruit better, because you look at Georgia and Alabama as well, there's a difference in the size. There's a size advantage that those teams have that Ole Miss isn't quite there yet. And that shows up most along the lines of scrimmage. So,
right.
But Kiffin said, we feel like we've addressed that. We feel like we've gotten a lot better there. And obviously that's going to be huge for them, because like you said, they played Georgia. I don't know if they play Alabama. I'm sure they play LSU.
Yeah.
With that rivalry there. So they're a team that's got a ton of expectations coming into this year. And if they're going to meet them, that area has got to take taken growth in leaps and bounds from what it was last year for sure.
I think leaps and bounds is the point there, because you can definitely make improvements year over year through the portal if you're tactical about it and you target areas of need. But when you're trying to increase depth across your roster and get bigger and longer, I think he talked about length and stuff too. They look good coming off the bus.
Yeah, and that's what he said. We're going to look a lot better coming off the bus this year. You still got to execute.
Yeah.
Obviously, injuries can play, like you never know.
Yeah.
But they feel like they've done a good job addressing length, size, all that kind of stuff over the past 8-9 months.
All right, so let's finish it up with a nice big fat softball. Your overall one-sentence takeaway from day one. I know for me, I'm just happy football's back.
I'm also happy football's back. I just think there's... I go back to Sankey, I guess, because there's so much...
Churn?
Because he talked about Congress stuff, and the SEC doesn't need outside help, but there also need to be Congress involved, and there's just so much uncertainty out there. And I think and I'm sure a lot of y'all feel the same way, you go through the offseason and all you hear about is realignment and NIL and all this other stuff.
Yeah.
And you get to this point, and even though there's not a ton of them, you get the sprinkled in questions about like quarterback battles and stuff.
Yeah.
That's when you're like, yeah, football's going to be back and it's going to be okay. And so that's what I feel like we're actually kind of getting out of the, not necessarily bad news, but the heavy stuff. And we're finally getting back into football pretty soon.
That's the one thing during the off season when you're looking for content and you're trying to find something to talk about, is not talking about conference realignment or the NIL or whatever it is. It's tricky. And so now we're back to talking football, and that's what you need to dial us back in for every night. We're going to have live streams here on the channel. We're going to be producing recap videos for you. If you need to know what's going on at SEC Media Days, you need to be following this channel. And while you're at it, jump on over and check out my channel, the HBTF Dogs Cast, a Damn Beast Media here on YouTube. We're in partnership this week, and we're bringing you only the very best, because that's how UGA Sports rolls. So until tomorrow, we'll see you for day 2. That's Jed May. I'm Randy Powers. Y'all have a good evening.